Good day, everyone. I am Shane Kalanig Ipis from BEd3. Before we start our discussion, let's have first an activity. So, our activity is a word puzzle activity, and all you have to do is to find the five hidden words in the puzzle. So, the words may appear horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. Alright, what words did you find? Very good. Listening, speaking, reading, writing, and viewing. So, what do these words have in common? They are the skills, very good, or macro skills. So, can we use more than one of these skills in one classroom activity? Yes, we can combine different macro skills in one activity. But let's find out that later. So today we will discuss about integration of macro skills in lesson planning. So here is our objectives. At the end of the lesson, we should be able to identify the five macro skills and their appropriate integration in the parts of a lesson plan. Classify given lesson activities according to the appropriate macro skill and lesson plan part. And appreciate the importance of macro skills. So at the end of this discussion, we should not only know the five macro skills, but also understand where they can be used in lesson plan. Now, let us define first what is integration. So, integration means combining or connecting different parts so they work together toward a common purpose. So, it means that integration is putting different things together so they work as one. In English teaching, this means we do not always teach one language skill separately. We can combine two or more skill in one activity. For example, when I show a picture and ask students to describe what they see, they are viewing the picture and speaking about it. So two skills are already being integrated. Now, what are macro skills? Macro skills are the major language skills used in communication. These are listening, speaking, reading, writing, and viewing. These are called macro skills because they are the major language skills we use when communicating and in our everyday lives. For example, we listen when someone talks to us. We speak when we respond, read messages, write our thoughts, and view pictures or images to understand information. So, what is integration of macro skills? Integration of macro skills means combining listening, speaking, reading, writing, and viewing in different activities within a lesson. These skills can be integrated into different parts of lesson depending on the learning objectives and activity. This means that the five macro skills do not have to be taught separately. A single classroom activity can develop more than one skill. The skills we choose should depend on what we want our learners to achieve. For example, if the objective is for learners to understand a story, we can let them listen to the story, view illustrations, discuss the story, and later write a response. In one lesson, several macro skills are already integrated. Now let us proceed to some parts of the lesson plan. First is the motivation. Macro skills integrated is viewing and speaking. Show a picture and ask learners what they see. In the motivation part, we can use viewing and speaking together. For example, the teacher can show a picture and ask learners what they notice. First, the learners use their viewing skill to understand the picture, and then they use speaking to describe or explain what they see. Alright, let's try this part. I will show you a picture. Now, what can you see in this picture? Yes, very good. There is a student and a teacher. So, by that, Which macro skill are we using? When I ask you, you use your listening and viewing skills, and when you answer, you use your speaking skills. So by that, you are not just using one skills. Therefore, there is an integration. Next is the presentation, listening and viewing. Let learners listen to a story while viewing illustrations. So during presentation, the teacher introduces the new lesson or information. So we can combine listening and viewing by letting learners listen to information while looking at related pictures or illustrations. Next is discussion, speaking and listening. Ask questions and let learners share their ideas. Discussion naturally uses speaking and listening, just like what I did right now, because learners need to listen to their teacher or classmates before giving their own ideas. It also needs speaking skills to express answers clearly. For example, is the teacher asks, "Why do you think the character made that decision?" One learners give an answer while the other learners listen. Then another learner can respond or add an idea. So by that, we are integrating or using the different skill. Let us proceed to the lesson proper. Reading. Let learners read a story paragraph or dialogue. So during the lesson proper, reading can be used to help learners understand the main content of the lesson. For example, if the lesson is about a short story, the learners can read the story and identify the characters, setting, and important events. Through this activity, reading helps them understand the lessons. So next is the application. Writing. Ask learners to write sentences or short response. So in the application part, learners use what they have learned by doing a task. Writing is one way they can demonstrate their understanding. For example, after reading a story, the teacher may ask learners to write a short response about what they learned from the story. So this will allow them to express their understanding through writing. Next is the generalization, speaking and listening. Let learners explain what they learned. For generalization, speaking and listening can be integrated because learners explain what they learned while their classmates listen. This will allow the teacher to check whether learners understood the important points of the lesson. So, for example, the teacher can ask, "What is the most important thing you learned today?" Learners can answer orally. And lastly is the evaluation, reading and writing or speaking. So give a short text and ask learners to answer questions. For evaluation, reading can be combined with writing or speaking. Learners may read a short passage and answer questions about either in written form or orally. For example, the teacher gives a short paragraph and asks learners to answer comprehension questions. They read the paragraph and then write or say their answers. So, do you understand the integration of macro skills in the lesson plan? That's good to hear. Let us now proceed to the importance of integration of macro skills. Develop communication skills. Learners become better communicators because they practice different language skills. Makes learning meaningful. Learners can use the skills in activities that are connected to real life situations. Encourages active participation. Learners are not only listening to the teacher, they are also speaking, reading, writing, and viewing. Connects to different language skills. The skills support one another instead of being taught separately. So, macro skills are not limited to only one part of the lesson. They can be combined and integrated into different parts depending on the learning objective and the activity. So, the important thing to remember is that a macro skill does not belong to only one part of the lesson. For example, Speaking can be used during motivation, discussion, generalization, or evaluation. The teacher chooses the appropriate skill based on the learning objective and the activity. So, in planning a lesson, we should always ask ourselves, what do I want my learners to achieve? And which macro skill or combination of skills will help them achieve? So, that's the end of our lesson for today. I hope you understand our lesson.